Hello and welcome to the seance room, where we communicate with our dearly departed and the occasional annoying, frustrating, but friendly office ghost. The seance room is a place where we all come to discuss everything and anything under the paranormal umbrella. So stay with us, join hands, and enjoy the episode. Today we will be talking about Skinwalker Ranch. Now, it's also known as the Sherman Ranch, also known as the site of paranormal and UFO related activities. Now, the property is located about 512 acres in southeast of Ballard, Utah. It's also, the name was taken from the Navajo, which means a vengeful shaman. Now, in previous episodes where I talked about skinwalkers, the Navajo don't talk about it because they believe it will attract them. So there's a couple things that happened here that kind of lead to people believing that it is known for its skinwalker appearances. Now, UFO reports that the Unita, again, I butchered the name, were publicized in the 70s. Claims that the ranch first appeared in 1996 in the Salt Lake City, Utah Desert News, and then in the Las Vegas Mercury articles investigated by journalist George Knapp. Now, the early stories detail that there are claims of a family that allegedly experienced inexplicable and frightening events after they purchased and occupied the property, which would be the Shermans. Now, like I said, the ranch is located west of the Unita County, bordering the Ute Indian Reservation, which is like popularity known as the UFO Ranch, due to some of its 50-year history of odd events that have taken place there. Now, according to Keller and Knapp, they have seen or investigated evidence close to 100 incidents that included vanishing and mutilated cattle, sightings of unidentified flying objects or orbs, large animals with piercing red eyes, think skinwalker there, that once they're struck with bullets, they don't die, and invisible objects emanating destructive magnetic fields. So think of a big creature attacking your livestock, and you go out and grab your rifle and start shooting at it, and it won't die. It's not even scared. It won't flinch. So that's what the Shermans were basically experiencing while they lived on the property. Now, there were stories of and folklores of cattle mutilations surrounding that area for decades. Billionaire Robert Bigelow purchased the ranch for $200,000 as a result that he was convinced that the stories of the mutilations and tales of strange lights and so on were true, and by the owner Terry Sherman. Now, in 1996, a skeptic by the name of James Randi awarded Bigelow the Pegasus Award for funding the purchase of the ranch and supporting Harvard University professor John Mack's and Buddy Hopkins' investigations. So, now, here's a list of the owners. We had, from 1934 to 1994, Kenneth and Edith Myers. from 94 to 96, which is only a short 2-year period, which the owners at that time experienced a lot. Terry and Gwen Sherman. From 96 to 2016 was Robert Bigelow. And from 2016 to now, Brandon Fugel purchased the property for $4.5 million. So if you're going to drop $4.5 million, must mean that there's something going on that property. After Brandon purchased the property, all the roads that led to the ranch were blocked. The perimeter secured with cameras and barbed wire. There are signs that prevent people from approaching the ranch. In 2017, Skinwalker Ranch was filed for trademark through the Justia trademarks, and then it was issued in 2018. And in March of 2020, the Brandon, who is 46, finally publicly announced that he was the owner of the ranch. Now, I don't know. I don't know about this. Well, let's talk about some stories. I'm getting my information as it's taking its sweet time. Now, Terry Sherman told this story a while back, so I'm going to kind of briefly mention some key points. Now, in the summer of 94, Terry, who is a rancher and cattle breeder, with his wife of Gwen, found their dream ranch. 480 acre spread with, was a remote little paradise for them. They thought it was a perfect place to raise their teenage son and their 9-year-old daughter. But they were puzzled as to why the price, why the location was vacant for 7 years, and why it was sold for so cheap. The land is bordered between the Unita and the Ute Indian Reservation, and it's protected by a large red rock ridge. Now, the first time something was different, in air quotes, was the large circular impressions that they kept finding in the pastures. Now, one of the configurations formed a 30-foot triangle. Other circles were found measuring anywhere between 3 feet wide and about 2 feet deep. The soil inside was firmly impacted, so it looks like something heavily sat on top of the ground and then it just sank down because the soil was so tight. At that same time, Terry was having trouble with his prize breeding herd of cattle. Now, the cows were dying unexpectedly. They couldn't figure out why his prized, cattle was starting to die. Now, in April of 95, the weirdness escalated. And I mean weird. Now, while checking on his cattle one evening, Terry saw a silent glowing object pass over a 50-foot tall stand of popular trees, like right on the outskirts of his field. Now, a few days later, Gwen experienced something. She saw a flying object. It looked like it had its headlights, but it was like a little bit away from the craft. And it was the whole side, and like it kind of like took the whole side of the mountain in broad daylight. Now, Terry examined his odd cattle deaths more closely. Now, the first cow found dead shortly after the first UFO sighting showed only a hole in the center of its left eyeball. Predators hadn't touched the carcass, and the Sherman noted that the chemical smell in the vicinity. Now, a short time later, a second cow was found dead with the same hole in the left eyeball. Now, with both of these animals, Terry, had taken a wire and inserted it into the hole to gauge how deep it was. In both cases, the wire slipped in easily to the center of the brain. So that hole was deep. I mean, like whatever went through these poor creatures, like went all the way in. Now, during that time, some of the Sherman's cows started to disappear. Terry said that when he contacted everyone around their home, it seemed like they just vanished. So they called people, they talked to people, they did a search, and there was no sign of these cows. In one instance, Terry found tracks of a cow in fresh snow. Now, he followed the tracks, and then they just stopped under trees at the edge of the field. Like, it just stopped and then disappeared. Now, cows weigh 600 to 1,000, 500 pounds. Where would a cow go all of a sudden? The area around the animal's last steps was surrounded by a circle of fresh twigs and branches. So it seems like whatever was there for a while, because all this fresh foliage, I can't say that word, had fallen on, and it formed a complete circle. Now, during the next months, the Shermans also observed a variety of craft, and the mutilation activity continued. The most spectacular aerial phenomenon they observed was described by Terry, as he was saying, a 100-foot circular openings appeared in the sky. It was like 4 orange-colored doorways, wood sort of spiral opening. Now, looking through the high-powered scope, the Shermans watched the smaller craft emerge from the hovering portals, fly around the property, and then re-enter the doorways. The Shermans described the stealthy, smaller craft as being about 60 by 40 feet and squished with short wings. The smaller craft looked like they were flying a grid. They also appeared to emit spikes of light which hit the ground. The Shermans thought about this, and they thought maybe it was some navigational system. Now, in a rare occurrence, the Sherman's son found a mutilated cow within 5 minutes of its death. The young man seen the gentle Angus eating peacefully and returned moments later, and it was dead. The cow's rectum had been cored out with a 6-inch wide hole, and it was 8 inches deep. What the? Ugh. Now, during the summer, Terry, his son, and his nephew heard unintelligible voices while standing in a nearby pasture. Now, the sounds seemed like echoes of a CB radio, but like directly above them. Now, as they listened closely, they heard 2 different voices speaking some unknown language, which Terry described as choppy, anti-halting, like a cross between Russian and Native American. Now, Terry yelled into the air, "We can hear you," and the voices stopped momentarily, and the deeper voice broke into a low rumbling laugh. The conversation then went on as before. So this is some creepy shit going on at this farm. Gwen caught a glance of a large, heavy-set individual seated in an object, and a short time later, the craft appeared soon. Both she and Terry watched through a 60-power spotting scope and could see the figure standing next to the object. Terry described it as a person, as being over 7 feet tall and decked out in total black uniform and very huge. Now, another phenomenon that began to plague the Shermans, the family started noticing glowing blue balls. Get your minds out of the gutter. And they were moving around the property. Now, these balls gave off a crackling noise that seemed intelligently controlled and could either hover or move unbelievably fast. One evening, the Shermans watched a blue ball approach one of their horses. The light hovered within a foot of the horse's face, spooked it, and from a distance 10 feet away, Gwen shined a flashlight on the blue globe, and it retreated. It then approached Terry as if it was inspecting him, and Terry described it as a glass ball the size of a baseball, which contained two blue fluids with intermingle with each other. Now, Terry says that was the scariest. That's as scared as he was in his entire life. Now, Gwen and Terry watched as their dogs followed the glowing globes into the wooded area. They lost sight of the ball, and then they heard a piercing yelp. The 3 dogs didn't return. Oh, man. I know what happened to the dogs. Deciding that discretion was the better part of the valor, the Shermans decided to wait until morning to investigate. The next day, yep, I knew it. Gwen and Terry found 3 burned circles in the woods. In the center of each circle, they discovered a greasy blob of what looked like to be shortening or butter. Now, the trees above the burned ring also looked to be scorched in appearance. According to Terry, the grass eventually grew back, but the tree limbs died. The butterized dogs were the final straw for Gwen and Terry. We couldn't just go on without our dogs, Terry said. Feeling that they could no longer guarantee the safety of their children, they decided to call it quits. Now, they would put this place up for sale and leave the hellish ranch. Terry also said that there were some really odd things about the place when they moved in, which they should have known something was wrong. The ranch's previous owner, who had no children, had lived there since the 30s. Mr. Meyer had died 15 years previous, and Miss Meyer lived there by herself for 7 years before she died. Now, when the Shermans moved in, they noticed heavy dog chains bolted by each of the 4 exterior doors. The Shermans assumed that the couple had a dog, which they moved from chain to chain to keep out of the sun. Terry inquired about the dog from a previous ranch hand. No, he was told. The Myers had 4 huge, ferocious dogs, which they kept chained to each of the doors. Now, in a scenario straight out of the Stephen King novel, the Shermans noticed another peculiar feature in the old place, that inside of every door in the house was outfitted with heavy deadbolt. Now, in the center of the house, the hallway area, with its access doors bolted. Now, in the hallway with a closet with a deadbolt, and inside the closet door. Now, after they made the decision to sell out, Terry had fallen into a conversation with a group of Indians who worked at the local water department. Now, the Indians told Terry that they had formed a pool to take bets to how long the Shermans would actually last on the ranch. The longest guess was 1.5 years. The Shermans lasted 2 years. Wow. So these Indians knew that something was up, and instead of telling the Shermans, they took bets. Crazy. Now, a local Indian shaman friend of Terry's told him that there were tribal songs about the spirits and spooks of the ranch area, going back 10 generations. Now, the shaman said that the area was considered unholy ground and was on the path of the skinwalkers. Now, among stream of curiosity seekers to the ranch in the Sherman's final days was a man who identified himself as Naval Intelligence Officer from North Carolina. The polite Navy man sympathized with their situation and had a great interest in reviewing the photos and the videos. Now, the Shermans spent their last day on the ranch rounding up cattle. By late evening, they were bone tired. They locked all the doors, saw their children to bed. Now, Gwen and Terry took hot showers, and they fell deep asleep. Next morning, they awoke to find their bedding covered with blood. They both had 1/8 inch deep scoop marks in the same place on their right thumbs. The ranch from hell had managed to tick them one last time. Now, selling the ranch had possessed a dilemma for the Shermans. We didn't want to put anyone at risk, and they suggested several different researchers that the Shermans were put in touch with the Las Vegas millionaire Robert Bigelow, who in recent years had invested substantial money in UFO-related research. Now, in '96, the deal was finalized. Bigelow bought the ranch for less than the Shermans paid for it. Terry also sold Bigelow a select herd of cattle and was hired on as an overseer for the operation. As part of the deal, Sherman signed a non-disclosure agreement which barred them from making any further statements about the ranch and other experiences. Meanwhile, the Sherman family had relocated to a ranch 20 miles away. Interesting. This story is very, very interesting. I mean, I get that the cattle mutilations and stuff like that. I totally get it, and God, I'm lost for words. Now, I read another article, and I also heard it on another podcast, that the Ute Indians would get involved with the slave trade. So they would go kidnap Navajo Indians and sell them to the Spaniards that occupied. Now, I believe that would piss off the Navajo. And the Ute tribe believed that the Navajo threw down a curse on the land. And that's why there's a whole bunch of weird stuff happening on the land. Some say that the skinwalker is the curse of the Navajo on that land. Now, there's a property, Strawberry, oh my God, I forgot the name, that it was turned into a bed and breakfast. Had a lot of paranormal activity. Katrina and Jack Osborne did a whole investigation on that. There was activity outside, and then it started to come inside. So, they got, the weird lights and the orbs outside and stuff like that. So, Skinwalker Ranch is quite interesting. I don't want to say that it's a hoax. I don't want to say that's not real, because clearly multiple different people have seen things. I heard that Gwen was driving home or driving up the road to get to their house when this huge creature that looked like a dire wolf stood in front of the car and just stared her down. There was another time when they were unloading boxes from their truck when this wolf creature walked up to them and let them pet it. Like, he walked by the cows and the cows all like backed up except for, one calf that decided to poke its head through the gate, and it walked right past it like nothing. It walked up to the Terry and Gwen, and they were able to pet it. But then something flipped, and, it ran toward the calf and, had its head in its mouth. And Terry shot it with his rifle, and it seemed like it wasn't scared. So I do believe that those creatures that they see that walk across their property, that have this weird walk, are skinwalkers. It's their land, cattle mutilations. I kind of reminds me of the chupacabras. Perfectly round puncture marks, drained of blood, no blood anywhere. So I want to say, if these cows, had 6-inch circles and, all these drilled marks going through their body, and there's no blood anywhere, I most definitely, if that was happening, you would hear it. You would hear an animal, crying in pain for, a laser beam, a hole being dug into them. But they didn't hear anything. Terry and Gwen didn't hear anything. And these animals just dropped. So yeah, I definitely say this property is 100% haunted. A lot of paranormal. I think Ghost Adventures did an episode there, and they caught a lot of grays. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look that up. But yeah, I most definitely say this gets the Miss Hyde stamp of paranormally haunted. All right, that's it for this episode. If you're new to the podcast community and you want to start a new podcast and you're looking for a platform that is user-friendly, that has everything you need at your fingertips, that won't set any limits, that you can earn money, then I would recommend Anchor. Now, Anchor can be used basically anywhere. You could be in your car, you can be laying on the sofa in bed, where you can edit, record, and upload. You can throw in soundtracks. You can, everything is there for you. Now, I use it because, it's user friendly, and it is free, and I find it really easy to navigate without it being very confusing. Now, most platforms, before you can even try it out, you need to sign up and pick a plan. I like Anchor because I don't have to go through any of that. So I recommend it. Now, if you really want to get into it, I recommend you going to your website, anchor.fm, and, signing up. Or you can download anchor.fm from the Google Store, iTunes, and give it a try. So don't forget to go to anchor.fm, sign up, and I'll see you all in the podcast community.
I'm Wolf.
I'm Rob.
And we're Table
Muscles. Let us make our... God damn it.
Let us make our goddammits into your god. I'm Wolf.
I'm Rob.
And we're Table
Muscles. Let us make our problems your problems.
We want to be the ones you turn to.
To help your day better?
No news or politics.
Just laughter and love.
Enjoy.
Thank you for joining us in the seance room. I hope you enjoyed the episode today. And I would like to thank all our new listeners, all our current listeners, and all our future listeners for joining us. With that being said, please like, share, and subscribe our podcast. We are on all platforms from Apple to Spotify to Castbox, soon to be iHeartRadio. So you can probably find us on all podcast platforms. If you have any stories you'd like to share, please go ahead and email us at whattheparanormal1977@gmail.com. We'll take a look at your story and we'll read it. If you would like to follow us on social media, we are on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also leave us a message via the Anchor app. The link will be listed below. And with that being said, we close the seance room. And we hope you all have a good day. And keep it ghosting.